everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Atisha and today in this video we are going to build this login form. So login form is really very crucial for any website, and as a web developer you must know how to build it. So I recently came across this login form and found to be really very appealing. So I thought, why not, let's try to build it. So in this video we'll be building this close replica of it using HTML and Tailwind CSS. So without any further delay, let's dive in. So let's have a look at this login form. So there is a gradient background that is added to the whole web page, and on the top of it there is a wrapper in which we have an image on the left, and to the right of it there are some login details that are required from any user, like email address, password, and in case they have forgotten the password, they can reset it or set it. So these are some of the things that we are going to have in our login form as well. So first we'll create a blueprint of all of these items that are required, and then we'll start styling it. So I have already set up a project, and within the body I'm going to create a div which will act as a wrapper around this login form, and within it we are going to have two more divs. One div will take care of the images that we saw on the left, and the other div is going to take care of the login details required. So in the first div we are going to have two images. So if you have a closer look at this, there are basically two images, one in the background and this teamwork image that is kept on the top of it. So the SVGs of it I have saved in my assets folder within my public folder with the name teamwork and sign up background. So let's create this. So in my image, in my assets folder, I'm going to have this sign up background. I'll keep the alt as empty. And similarly, I'm going to create another image tag, and it's going to have this teamwork image and keep the alt as empty. And within the second div, I'm going to have multiple things. First is going to be an H1. Here it says sign in, but we are going to call it login. And then we have a P tag which says access to 300 plus hours of courses, tutorials, and live streams. So I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to create a form which will have initially the action as none. And within it, I'm going to have those input options and a button. Now, if you have a look at this, along with the input box that we are going to create, we also have icon. For example, for this email address, we have an icon of email, and with password, we have a lock icon that is there. So within my form, I'm going to create a div, and within it, going to create another div inside which I'm going to keep the icon that I want. And then I have an input tag. So first one is going to have a type of email, and I'm going to have the placeholder as email address. And similarly, I'm going to create another div. So I've copy pasted this one, and which will have a type of text, and the placeholder is going to be password. And then outside it, I'm going to create a button which says sign in. Outside this form, I'm going to create a div which will take care of these three lines that are there. So first one is don't have an account, sign in. So I'll create a P tag, paste it over here. And for this particular sign up option, I'm going to create an A tag and keep it within it, because this will lead the person to some other web page. Okay, so this is done. Now let's have a look at how our web page is looking like. So here we can see we have all the things ready. We have these two images that we imported. We have the login. We have all these input boxes, etc., etc. Now another thing that we want to add in here are those icons that I was talking about. So we are going to refer to the Font Awesome icon library as always. Let's search for open email. Okay, let's take this one for now. And I'm gonna paste it over here. Similarly, let's search for the lock one. So use this one. So I am copying this one and paste it over here. This won't work as we haven't imported the CDN link of it. So let's search for CDN.js of Font Awesome icon library. Copy the first one from here and paste it over here and save. Now let's see. Okay, now we have these two icons as well. Now we'll start styling it. So the first thing that we are going to do here is to add a gradient background to a whole web page. So I'm going to go within this body and give it a class of bg gradient to right, and I'm going to use 3 colors in here. So the first one is going to be this pink, which is going to be spanned over 10% of the screen. Then we are going to have purple, which is going to be on the 30% of the screen, and then ultimately we have this blue color spanning over the maximum portion of the screen. And save. Let's see. Yes, there is a gradient background added. Now we will start working on this wrapper that is created around this login form. So in this inside div, I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to give a maximum width to it, around 960 pixels. You can give it whatever you want, and then I'm going to add a color so that it looks distinctive. So that color I'm going to use very often in this whole project. So instead of specifying it every single time, I'm going to extend my color palette. So I'm going to go within this tailwind.config.js file and extend my color palette. So I'm going to specify this colors and call it, say, black dark. It's going to be very similar to black, but it's going to have some opacity. So it's going to have opacity of 50 and save. So in our index.html, now you would see that this color would be available. So I will write bg of black dark. You can see this option is now available and save. Okay, now we can see that this wrapper is there and there is a maximum width that is given to it, and we want it in the center of the screen. So to our body, we are going to give a flex property, keep it vertically in the center and also horizontally in the center, and give it a height of screen. Okay, now you can see that now it's kept in the middle of the screen, but these items are kept one below the other. But if you see here, they are kept side by side. So we can use the property of grid as well as flex, but for now here I'm going to use the grid property as it is going to simplify the whole process. I'm going to use grid and specify the grid calls as 2 and keep them vertically in the center and save. Now you can see that they are kept side by side. This image is not kept on the top of it because we haven't played around with it as of now, but once it is kept on the top of it, you can imagine how this is going to look like. So this is done. Now the next step that we are going to do is to also add a padding inside this wrapper, because you can see here this image is not exactly touching this wrapper. So here I'm going to add a p of 5, and also the border radius was given, so I'm going to use this rounded property and give it 2xl and save. Yes, so we have this wrapper ready. Now it is time to work on the left and the right portion of it. So to the left of it, we have this image. We want this teamwork image to be kept on the top of this background image that we have added. So we will be using the CSS position property in here. So to this second image that I have, I'm going to give it a position of absolute, and to its parent, I'm going to give it a class of relative, so that this absolute is applied relative to this parent div that we have, and I'm going to give a top property of 36 to it and save. Okay, now you can see this image is positioned perfectly fine. You can play around with the top position in order to keep it somewhere else as well, but this is fine for us if we compare it with this one. Now we'll be working on the actual login details that are required from any user. So within it, the first is this h1 tag which says login. So here, before it, I'm going to give this whole div a maximum width of, say, 80 and save. Okay, this is fine. Also, you can observe that the space in between this image and the login details is less in here as compared to this one. So we are going to give a gap property to our grid that we have. So I'm going to give it a gap of around 20. Yes, now we have enough gap. And after that, we can observe that within the divs that we have created in this login details option, we don't have any gap. So we can again use the gap property within grid. Else we can also use the space of y property that is provided by Tailwind. In here, I'm going to use the grid property and give it a gap of around 5 and save. Okay, you can see now the gap is there. Okay, so for this h1 tag that we have, I'm going to give it a class of text of around 5 XL and keep the font as bold. And also the text I want to be in white color and save. Okay, this is fine. To this next p tag that we have, it is having a whitish color but a dull version of it, and this color is being used in here as well in these 3 lines. So I'm going to extend my color palette again. So here I'll define a dull white color, and this I'm going to use in my p tag. So I'll give it a class. Now you can see this dull white would be available and save it. Now we have this p tag perfectly fine as well. The next thing that we have is this form that we had created. So for this form, the first modification that we are going to do for this email address is going to be get replicated for this password option as well. So let's play around with it. Okay, so to this form, let's give it a class so that there is a space in between them. I'm going to use a space of y of 6. You can see how I'm using space in here, and I had used gap in here. You can play around with it and see what happens. And to this overall text that is going to be there in this form, I'm going to give it a color of white. Okay, now you can observe the gap is increased. So for the div that we have defined in the form, first I'm going to play around with this input option. I'm going to add some styling to it, and then accordingly I will adjust the styling of this icon that I've added. So I'm going to give it a class. First I'm going to give it a specific width of around 80. Also, if you observe in here, the background that is given to this input option is in different color, a white version of it but with some opacity, and when the person focus on it, the color changes, right? So accordingly I'm going to define 2 colors in here of white with some opacity. So instead of writing it every single time, I'm going to specify them in my tailwind.config.js file. First one, I'm going to call it, say, white light, and it's going to have the same hex that we have of white but with some opacity. And similarly, I'm going to specify a white, say, medium, will have opacity of 40 and save. Okay, now I'm going to use that color. So I will call it white light. Now you can see that a background is added to it. Now the next thing that we are going to do here is to add some padding to it. So I will have py of 2 and a px of around, say, 3. I'm going to use the rounded property in here, rounded of full, and save. Yes, it's fine. The next thing that we have is when we focus on it, the outline should remove and it should change its color. So here, when we focus on it, the background should get changed, black, dark. I think it will look better. And when we focus, I want the outline to be removed. And on focus, there is a ring that is added. If you see, there is this ring which is in blue color. So I'm going to specify in here, let's call it neon blue. This is what we are going to use. And when we focus, I want a ring around it, and there is a specific color that I want to give to that ring. Specify this neon blue color that I have just defined. And last, when we focus, I want a drop shadow. So drop shadow of LG should be fine, and save. Okay, now you can see there is a ring that is added, but it's a bit broad. So I can specify and write ring of 1 and save. Okay, now you can see a ring is added. This is looking perfectly fine. And similarly, we can do it for password. But before that, let me adjust this icon that I have. So for this icon, I need to give it a class of absolute, just like we have given to the image above. And it should be relative to this div that we have, the outer one. So I'm going to give it a relative property. So I'm going to give it a top of 1 and a left of 1 and save. Okay, now you can see that it is added in here. Let's also give it a background color. So I'm going to use white of medium. Okay, you can see that a background is added, but this email address is getting hidden behind this icon. So I need to adjust my px. So let me give it a px of around 12 and save. Okay, this is fine. We just need to adjust this icon's background and its color. So I've already given it a background. Let me use a rounded property. So I will use rounded of full and give it a p of 2. This is fine, but we want it in the center, so I can use the flex property in here. So I'm going to give it a flex, give it items as center and justify center property and save. Yes, now it's appearing fine. Also, the color of it needs to be bit blue. Since we couldn't find the same icon, but I can use a blue color in here. So I can write text of blue of around 300 and save. Yes, now it's perfectly fine. You can see now we can write in it and this is appearing fine. Similarly to this password, we are going to add the same classes that we have in here. Save. Yes, now you can see both of these options are appearing to be fine, and when we focus on it, the background is changing. So the last thing that is left to style in this form is this sign in button. So to this sign in button, we need to add a gradient background. So there is an amazing website that we have, this tailwindcomponents.com, and within this we have this gradient generator. So you can play around and see which color matches with what you required. So for example, for this one, we can experiment with say blue 400, and to this 2 color we can choose the color that we want. I think this is fine. So yeah, this one we can use, and you can simply copy this one from here and use it in your project. So to this button, I'm going to give it a class and simply paste the line that I've just copied and save. Let's see if a gradient background is added. Yes, a gradient one is added. Now to this as well, I'm going to give it a width of 80 so that its width is similar to both the input options that we have. And I'm going to give it a font of say semi bold, and I'm going to give it a rounded full property and save. Yes, this is looking fine. Also, we need to add padding from top and bottom. So I'm going to use the py. So I'll give it a py of 2 and save. Yes, now we have the sign in button as well, which is looking similar to this one. Okay, so last thing that we are going to work on these three options that we have. Okay, so for this one, to this outer div, I'm going to specify the text color that I want in all of these p tags that I've created, so that I don't have to give them individually. I can instead define it in the parent div itself. So I'm going to use the text of dull of white and save. Okay, now you can see the color is changed, but there is one more thing. There is a top border that is given, a line. So I can use the border property in here. So I will use a border of top, and I'm going to give it a color. So I'm going to use white light and save. There is a line as well, but this don't have an account. Text is just touching this line. So I will use my padding property. So I'll give it a pt of 4. Space of y property. So space of y of 4. Yes, now it's fine. Also, you can observe that the text in here is very small as compared to this one. So we will give it a text of small and save. Yes, now it's fine. The last thing that is left is to work on these A tags that we have created. You can see there is just a few differences. We have a different color that we have given to this one, and also when we are hovering on it, the cursor is changing to pointer, and the font is also a bit bold. So to this A tag, I'm going to give it a class. I have already defined my neon blue color that I'm going to use in here. So I'm going to give it neon blue and give it a font of semi bold, and also when we hover on it, we want the cursor to be pointer and save. Let's see. Yes, now we can see when we are hovering on it, the cursor is changing to pointer, and also the color is changed. So similarly, we need to give it to the rest as well. So let me copy this class and paste it over here. So now you can see we have all the things ready. So congratulations, we have successfully built our login form, and it's looking really very similar to what we have on this designcode.io website. So you can have a look at some other websites, see how their login forms are looking like, and try building them. This is how you are going to practice and hone your HTML and Tailwind CSS skills. So that's all for this video. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more such videos in future. And do let me know in the comments what all types of video you want me to create on this particular channel. See you in the next one.